So we are in live now. So Tripodi, you can start now.
I think one request is there to Madam Sunipa. Can you introduce yourself, Madam?
Yes, sir. I'm from Jadavpur University from the Department of Geological Sciences.
Geological Sciences.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm assistant professor.
That's why I was not knowing you. Sorry for that, but you are welcome to the Foundation of Practicing Geographer.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Devabrata, am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible. Dr. Ghislain Jangmo, he has also joined. Dr. Utto, sir,
good morning.
Sir. Good morning to all of you. Dr. Jangmo, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you very well.
Yes, Azdarul, you are very much visible and audible.
Okay. Thank you.
Satrupati, please start the session.
A very good morning to all the distinguished guests, delegates, speakers, all the members of the Foundation of Practicing Geographers. I, Dr. Shatarupa De Niyogi, on behalf of the Foundation of Practicing Geographers, welcome you all to this two-day international webinar on river and changing riverine ecosystem. I welcome you all. Now, I will be conducting this session. At the very onset of this session, Dr. Uttyo Chattopadhyay, Research Scholar, Department of Geography, Vishwa Bharati, will be performing the opening song. I would request Dr. Uttyo Chattopadhyay to kindly perform your song.
Bye.
Dr. Uttiyo Chattopadhyay for such a harmonious and melodious beginning of this international webinar. Now I would like to request Dr. Ajnarul Islam. He is the Assistant Professor and HOD of Department of Geography, Alia University, and also the convener of this international webinar, to kindly deliberate on his welcome address.
Good morning to everyone present in this August gathering. I, Dr. Ajnarul Islam, on behalf of Foundation of Practicing Geographers, Kolkata, would like to welcome the inaugural speaker, keynote speaker, distinguished guest speakers, distinguished lead speakers, delegate speakers, session chairs, session coordinators, and all the participants from the different countries, including India, Bangladesh, and Cameroon, to this two-day international webinar on river and changing riverine ecosystem on 25th and 26th September 2021, organized by the Foundation of Practicing Geographers. The journey of this webinar started about 1 year ago with the conceptualization of this year's theme by Dr. Arun Kumar Singh, Secretary, Foundation of the Practicing Geographer, Kolkata. I convey my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Singh for thinking such a timely theme. After I assumed the responsibility as the convener of this webinar, I reached out to all the experts in this field with the kind request to participate and deliver talks. I'm really thankful to all of them for extending their overwhelming response. First, I am extremely delighted to pronounce the inaugural speaker of this webinar, who is none other than Dr. Kalyan Rudro, Chairperson, West Bengal Pollution Control Board, Government of West Bengal, and eminent river scientist, who will deliver his inaugural address on the title, The Changing River Courses and Coastline of Bengal, 1780 to 2020. It's a moment of extreme pleasure to welcome the keynote speaker, Professor Sanat Kumar Guchai, Department of Geography, the University of Burdwan, who will be talking on discoursing river from the physical and the social science, social backdrops. I extend my warm welcome to 16 distinguished guest speakers, 17 lead speakers, 20 delegate speakers, and 6 speakers in the valedictory session from India, Bangladesh, and Cameroon to deliver their valuable talks to address the river and changing riverine ecosystem from different disciplines such as geography, GI science, earth sciences, social sciences, environmental sciences, planning, and development that will pave the way towards the integrated management idea for these vulnerable fluvial systems. I welcome Professor Bishambar Prasad Shati, Mizoram University, India, Professor Devendra Kumar Nayak, Northeast Hill University, Meghalaya, Professor A.R. Siddiqui, Allahabad University, India, Professor M. Shahidul Islam, University of Dhaka, Professor Swadesh Pal, University of Gourbongo, Professor A.K.M. Anwaruzama, Alia University, Kolkata, Professor Malik Akram Hussain, Jagannath University, Dhaka, Professor Mujibur Rahman, Environmental Science Discipline, Khulna University, Bangladesh, to chair the 9 sessions in this 2 days webinar. I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Shatrupati Nyogi, Sarojini Naidu College for Women, Kolkata, Dr. Sumit Mukherjee, ANSI, Anthropological Survey of India, Kolkata, Dr. Orijit Mujumdar, Jadavpur University, Rituparna Khan, Bidhannagar College, Dr. Somashi Sengupta, University of Burdwan, Dr. Rukhsana, Alia University, Dr. Mustaqim, Alia University, and Dr. Priyank Patel, Presidency University, to act as the session coordinator. I welcome the respected members of the governing body of the Foundation of the Practicing Geographers, members of the core committee, seminar think tank, organizing committee, and international advisory committee who have supported us every moment with their valuable suggestions and guidance. I extend my warm welcome to Dr. Abhanna Mukherjee, Dr. Ayan Das Gupta, Joint Convener, Srimati Prakriti Das, Joint Secretary, Dr. Sumit Mukherjee, Dr. Umesh Kumar, for whom, without their support, we couldn't make this webinar fruitful today. I welcome Dr. Utiya Chattopadhyay, Vishwabharati Shantiniketan for managing the cultural aspect of the webinar. I also welcome Mr. Shahnawaz Ahmed for preparing the seminar brochure and designing the cover of the abstract volume. Finally, I welcome Devabroto and his teammates for the technical support to be extended during the webinar session. Today, weather is not fair in our locality. Hence, I request to all of you to cooperate with us in case of any technical glitches. Hope you will enjoy the webinar session for the better future for society and the environment. With these few words, I again extend my very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ajnarul Islam, for welcoming everyone. Now I would request Dr. Aborna Mukhopadhyay, Joint Convener and Associate Professor and HOD of Department of Geography, Ranaghat College under Kulani University, to kindly introduce the webinar.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. This is my pleasure. I just convey my heartfelt good wishes to this seminar with some words. You cannot step twice into the same river. Next time the river will not be the same. This maxim of the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus probably described most precisely the dynamic nature of rivers, and understanding the ecological structure and function of natural and altered riverine ecosystem is an interesting subject matter of geography, no doubt. And this has sparked development of numerous conceptual models, shaped empirical research and fundings, and occasionally altered government policies on river conservation, management, and rehabilitation. This webinar aims to expand our knowledge about the state of existing riverine ecosystem and its future. Actually, river is an open system whose physical structure changes dramatically over time and spaces. So we may propose an integrative framework to facilitate the understanding of both ecology of a broad longitudinal and lateral dimension from headward to the ultimate great rivers or the ultimate base level, and the local or regional ecological pattern across various temporal and smaller spatial processes. Actually, riverine ecosystem possesses a four-dimensional nature, and that the rivers, more than a single thread passing through a terrestrial landscape, along with the longitudinal and lateral extension of a river, we should also focus on vertical and temporal dimension of a river. And water transfer from precipitation into rivers and oceans, and vice versa, including its vaporization, which we may call the water cycle or the hydrological cycle. And this hydrological cycle is the main driving force of the riverine ecosystem. A river is a river only if it flows. If the flow is natural, if there is enough space along the river for the natural variation in a flow to pass, and if it has the ability to assimilate the organic and inorganic substances entering it. We call the rivers as mothers or goddesses, but treat them with utter contempt. In India, rivers have not been understood as an ecosystem, but are treated simply as a conduits of water or wastewater. Thus, the ecological function or ecological services, whatever it may call, of rivers have never truly estimated. Rivers which flow naturally and unrestrained sustain biodiversity, assimilate non-toxic wastes, enrich soils with fertility, support livelihoods, recharge groundwaters, improve aesthetics, and so on. But we never make any cost-benefit analysis of various projects impacting upon them. Rivers must be treated as national natural heritage. The water that unites living and non-living throughout the planet Earth should be maintained more auspiciously. We should act more pragmatically in regulation of rivers through dams and barrages and embankments, and to ensure flows to maintain ecological integrity of rivers and to sustain the ecosystem services of the rivers. The laws and policies are also required to eliminate the wasteful use of water in the agricultural, urban, and industrial sector. It is utmost importance. It is a high time to introspect and analyze the cost benefit of the so-called developmental projects in the name of flood control and water resource development. We should have minimum interference with rivers, which are not only our lifeline, but have been our cradle of civilization. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abarna Mukhopadhyay, for such enlightening words and setting the theme of the webinar. And now I would request Dr. Ayan Dasgupta, Joint Convener and Assistant Professor of PG Department of Geography, Chandanagar Government College, to throw the spotlight on the webinar.
A very good morning to all. Like the previous year, this year too, our famous Foundation of Practicing Geographers, erstwhile the Indian Geographical Foundation, has organized another online academic deliberation for the enlightenment of the target audiences. Different elite academicians as well as the erudite geographers from different parts of the globe have been assembled over here for delivering their research outputs. The focal theme of today's webinar is River and the Changing Riverine Ecosystem. It will address multiple hotly debatable issues and various burning challenges amidst the globe related to fluvial hazards and their lingering loops behind the fate of hopeless and hapless human beings associated directly and indirectly with fluvial ecosystems. Maladies of society, culture, and economy evolved mainly with river at their centers, etc. Scholars will throw searchlight on the effective policy framing for sustainable development associated with the dynamic fluvial domains. We know that some of our respected speakers will present their talks on conservation and management of manifold hydrological menaces by the thorough application of the aids of remote sensing and geographic information system. Research scholars are working continuously around the globe on paleo channels, wetlands, etc. to get a clear picture on the overall histogenesis of fluvial dynamics. River health is a vital issue to be discussed in different academic forums because that's a matter of serious concern nowadays. In our lotic ecosystems, any spring, stream, or river can be viewed as an integral part of a macro ecosystem. The spontaneous flow of water does exhibit a longitudinal gradation in temperatures, concentration of total dissolved solids, turbidity, and atmospheric gases from the source to the mouth. Freshwater ecosystems naturally share the precious endowments across the habitats. The ecosystems in rivers and streams fetch salts and nutrients from the orographic belts to lacustrine environs, ponds, and wetlands at lower elevations, and eventually they bring those nutrients to the ocean, which is of paramount significance for the sustenance and survival of the marine flora and fauna. The riverine system incorporates all the deepwater habitats contained within a channel, with a few exceptions like wetlands dominated by trees, shrubs, persistent emergent mosses or lichens, and habitats with water containing ocean-derived salts in excess to 0.5 parts per million. River ecosystems are conspicuously at risk. Their direct economic significances to Anthropocenes include their usage in transportation, navigation, water supply, energy, provision of harvestable products, and so on and so forth. Estuarine environments are the fragile ecosystems, extremely vulnerable to both natural and anthropogenic interventions. The forces of nature such as winds, tidal currents, waves, and temperature can influence an estuary's normal balance. Turtles, ducks, crocodiles, catfish, dragonfly, and crabs can be found in rivers all around the world. And the Amazon River is even home to the rarest pink freshwater dolphin. An exceptional number of different fish species can also be obtained in rivers and streams all over the globe. It's known to us that fishing is a noteworthy economic practice as fishes add sufficient protein to our regular diets. The types of coastal ecosystems like mangroves, seagrasses, and tidal marshes store half of the blue carbon buried beneath the ocean floor. So reducing plastic consumption, regular systematic clearance of sludge or garbages from water can not only save the riverine ecosystems, but also can salvage our maximum scaring problems of the overall environmental degradation. Some of the globally acclaimed research works are as follows on river and riverine ecosystem. Number one, understanding rivers and their social relations, a critical step to advance environmental water management. Number two, the rise of riverine flow ecology and environmental flow researches. Number three, effects of human-driven water stresses on riverine ecosystems, the meta-analysis. Number four, linking ecosystem services, rehabilitation, and riverine hydrogeomorphology. Number five, trends in stream biodiversity research since the emergence of riverine continuum concept. Number six, understanding hydroecological surprises for riverine ecosystem analysis. Number seven, impacts of riverine sand mining on freshwater ecosystems, etc. I do hope that our listeners will be gathering knowledge up to a supra-optimum level from the orations of different academicians in our two-day international webinar. This was my final submission to all of you, and hopefully you all will enjoy our program a lot. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Oyun Dasgupta, for such nice words and setting the theme of this webinar. Now I would like to welcome a very distinguished guest. We are very honored to have him with us. He is none other than Dr. Kollan Rudra, sir. He is a man who needs no introduction, but still a few words for him. Dr. Rudra is presently chairman of West Bengal Pollution Control Board and also member of the Central Pollution Control Board. He is a geographer by academic training, having specialization in river and water management. He took a break from his protracted teaching career in 2007 and joined in a research project of West Bengal Pollution Control Board. He worked as the project director in 2 projects of West Bengal Pollution Control Board. He has been the expert member in the committee constituted by the Apex Court of the state for cleaning the Ganga since 2005. Dr. Rudra was a member of the National Flood Management Core Group and he has written 5 books. He has also been the member of the committee constituted to advise the government of West Bengal on the issue of Indo-Bangladesh sharing of Tista River, and the list continues. And knowing how brilliant an orator he is, we all are looking forward for his inaugural address. I welcome sir and request sir to kindly start his deliberations.
Thank you, Shatarupa.
Welcome, sir. Good morning.
I can see my old friends. Urunda is there. I can also see my mountaineer friend, Sumit. How are you, Sumit? Kemon acho? And I can also see many other friends here. And this is really a good opportunity for me to interact on an issue which is very close to my heart, that is floodplain ecology. Before I start my presentation, I would like to share my views. We have a gross misunderstanding about the riverine ecosystem. The British East India Company took over the control of Bengal, and therefrom the Bengal rivers were tamed. I will explain in my lecture. I promise that I will finish within 30 minutes as desired by the organizer. I had talked with Ajnarul that my time is about 30 minutes. Okay. What I like to say that why I say that we have a gross misunderstanding about the river. We have an understanding that the river has a source, river has a mouth, river is the conduit of flowing water. We have also a misunderstanding that human society is the exclusive custodian of flowing water. But river has four major components. One is definitely the water. Second is river carries sediment load. Third is river has energy, it can generate energy. Fourth is river is the biodiversity hotspot. But whenever we try to manage the river, we look it as a stock, not as flow. And when we construct dams, barrages, etc., our intention is to withdraw water. But we often forget that river carries sediment load, and it interrupts the life cycle of the species living thereon. So this understanding of river we borrowed from the British Institute, and the British left India in 1947, but that colonial legacy of river management continues. The very competent engineers, many of them are my friends, coming out of Roorkee, IIT or Bengal Engineering College, they were trained in such a way that they also carry forward the British legacy of looking at the river. Ramaswamy Iyer had been the secretary to the Ministry of Water Resource. He died a few years back in Delhi. Before his death, I had the opportunity of meeting him. And he, at that point of time, was editing a book, Living Rivers and Dying Rivers. He said, Kullan, about 40 years back when I joined Central Ministry of Water Resources, I was given an understanding that more water we take away from the river, more we construct dams and barrages, more we excavate canal to withdraw water, more will be the agricultural prosperity, more will be the growth, more will be the GDP. And that is development. But after working long, more than 4 decades, and subsequent research during my retirement life, I understand, I quote him, more water we allow to flow through river, more we gain. I was very humble. I said, why, sir? He said, sir, Kullan River renders many apparently invisible services to the society and ecosystem. What are those services? It flushes the sediment load to the river estuary, making it deep. It recharges the groundwater. It spills off during the flood and leaves behind very fertilizing silt on the agricultural field, leading to prosperity of Bengal and many other states of the country. And it supports the biodiversity, it helps the navigation, it helps, it quenches the thirst of the people. It has many apparently invisible services. But when we convert the river into a stagnant pool of water, from flowing to a stagnant pool of many ecological services disappears. And that ultimately causes ecological disasters. With this background, I will be very brief. I will make a very short presentation and discuss what happened in Bengal. Screen sharing ta amake ekটু allow korte hobe, please.
Devabruto, please do the needful.
Devabruto.
Yes, sir. Now you can share.
Yes. I mean, এটা কি দেখা যাচ্ছে?
No, sir, not yet.
আমি এক মিনিট। এবার দেখা যাচ্ছে?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It's visible now.
ফুল স্ক্রিন করে নি। সরি। Yes, I hope you can see my presentation. And
yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, and I also hope that my voice is clearly reaching you.
Absolutely clear, sir.
Okay. I was supposed to talk on the changing river courses of Bengal, but I will slightly differ from that and widen my discussion on floodplain ecology also, and how it has changed in recent times. And I talked about this, that when the British took over the control of Bengal was an exclusively uninterrupted river system and intricate drainage system. What they realized that we need an understanding about the river system and the topography of Bengal. So they started to survey Bengal under the leadership of James Reddell. And James Reddell, after a long survey of about 14 years, he from 1764 to 1777, he procured huge database, and he left for England in 1777 because at that point of time, Bengal and India did not have any printing press. So he compiled the data in London and then produced an atlas, what we call Bengal Atlas, a compilation of about 13 maps. Subsequently, 7 more maps were added. I will start with one of the map of James Reddell, published in 1780, and compare that with how the river system had changed, because some reasons are obviously natural, some reasons are because of the tectonic change in Bengal basin, and some are due to human intervention. Look at this map. There are some arrows and there are some stars marked in it. And I will just focus on this area, how this changes. Look at my cursor. This is Brahmaputra, what we call Jamuna in Bangladesh. Jamuna in Bangladesh at that point of time flowing through a different course through Moymansingh and Sylhet. And coming down here, it receives Meghna and flowed downstream and discharging independently into Bay of Bengal. It did not have any connection with the Ganga. Ganga and Brahmaputra at that point of time were two separate basins discharging into the Bay of Bengal. Look at Ganga. This is Ganga. This is Ganga flowing straight, and it has a separate outlet into the Bay of Bengal. So Ganga and Brahmaputra were distinctly separate. But some Holocene neotectonic change of Bengal has changed the river system of Bengal. I would like to say that central Bengal meaning the course of along this route, this arrow is slowly subsiding. Morgan and McIntyre published a paper in the American Society of Journal. They said that this tract is subsiding under the weight of the sediment load. And that resulted the diversion of the Tista in 1787. Look at this. Tista earlier discharged through 3 rivers distributed. One is Korotwa, second is Atri, third is Punarbhava. Three rivers, three distributary channels gave it the name Tristrota or Tista. Tista changed its course in 1787. There was a devastating flood. After receiving the flood, people of North Bengal observed that Tista has left behind the Ganga, and these channels became moribund. That is Korotoa, Atri, and Punarbhava, and Tista opened a new course to Brahmaputra. After 43 years of this event, Brahmaputra also migrated westward. It left behind its old course through Mymensingh. It came back to here. It came here. And Tista and Brahmaputra combined together made a clear southward course, joining Ganga near a place called Jafarganj. Please look at my cursor. Jafarganj no longer exists, it is completely eroded. So, and two kinds of changes we observed in 1780. One is this kind of avulsion. Avulsion means when river leave behind a distributary channel and migrate elsewhere. That did both Jamuna or Brahmaputra and the Tista. Second one is the lateral migration of the Ganga, lateral migration of the other rivers, what we call meander migration. That I will try to also explain. In case of this kind of lower distributaries of the Bhagirathi, if you look here, here had been our famous medieval port called Sandgaon, Saptagram. And Bhagirathi used to bifurcate it into three channels: Saraswati, Vidyadhari, Jamuna, and Bhagirathi itself. The three distributary channels also gave the name Tribeni in Hubli district. Tribeni means three braids of hair discharging away from each other. And if you also look at the lower Damodar here, lower Damodar, if you look at the further earlier maps, it used to discharge one branch directly to Bhagirathi here near Kalna. But in Reynolds' time, we find only one channel, that is, and there were many distributary channels too, which became active during the flood time. That I will also explain. Lastly, I will try to explain, since time is very short, how the coastal Bengal has changed. If you keep in mind this Reynolds map and now look at a modern satellite image, you can find how the river system has drastically changed. This is the modern map. You can see the old course of the Brahmaputra here. You can also see the distributary channels of the Tista. Tista is here. You can also see the lateral oscillation of the Ganga at many places. And you can also see the lower Damodar fan. And if you look at the coastal Bengal and compare it with the older map, it has also remarkably changed. So we will have to go back to the geological history. We know the Pleistocene Ice Age. During the Pleistocene Ice Age, geologists have said that Bay of Bengal was retreated southward by about 120 meters. And at that point of time, there was serious shortage of flowing rivers because there was what we call snowfall, not exactly the rainfall in Himalayan slopes. But since 15,000 years BP, the climate change started in Bengal Basin and the glaciers started to melt. The sea level, glaciers started to retreat and the sea level gradually went up. And a huge sediment load carried by the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Tista, Mahananda, and other tributaries draining down the Himalaya entered Bengal through a narrow gap, what we call Rajmahal Meghalaya gap. The formation of the Ganga-Brahmaputra delta system accelerated during 10,000 years too. This is the time when all Holocene deltas of the earth started to grow. And the Bay of Bengal also received huge sediment load. So sediment load pushed southward the Bay of Bengal and a new river system started to develop, a complex network of river system. Since 11,500 years BP, another important change happened in this subcontinent. That is, southwest monsoon started to establish itself. This resulted in huge precipitation on the Himalayan southern slope. And the snowmelt water as well as the rainwater combining together carried 2.5 billion tons of sediment load per year compared to 1 billion tons presently carried by the Ganga-Brahmaputra system. So this sediment load pushed the sea southward and created the new land, what we call Sujola Sufala Bengal. The water and sediment load nourishes Bengal. That's why it is so productive. Incidentally, while the course of Brahmaputra or 90-degree longitudinal line was subsiding, we find two compensatory areas of upheaval which are two major fans. One is Barin and other is Madhupurgarh. I will show in the image. You can see this huge fan, what we call Barin, which was formed during the Pleistocene Ice Age, or the retreating stage of the Pleistocene Ice Age. And now it is overlaid by the Tista fan over it. You can see this is Mahananda, you can see this is Torsha, Tista, this is Joldhaka, this is... All these rivers carry sediment load southward and formed an upland, what we call Barin tract. In East Bengal or Bangladesh, this Madhupurgarh was another major fan carried by the sediment load of the Brahmaputra, and deposition resulted this fan. So on both sides of the Jamuna and Brahmaputra, you will find two uplands. One is Barin tract, other is Madhupurgarh, which has subsequently slowly experienced upheaval because what we call, while the central Bengal is subsiding, we need two compensatory areas of upheaval. One is Madhupurgarh, other is Barin tract. So what happened subsequently? So major changes, what happened, the Tista changed its course. The main flow of the Ganga left behind Bhagirathi, Jalongi, Mathabanga and many other distributaries and flowed along the Padma. And it has further resulted beheading or disconnection of the distributary channels like Bhagirathi, Jalongi, Mathabanga and many other distributaries. So it has a tendency to flow eastward, and entire hydrology and ecology of Bengal gradually changed. The Bhagirathi and its distributaries like Saraswati, Jamuna, Vidyadhari, Adi Ganga, they have all decayed. And a new hydraulic system developed in Bengal. And coastline of Bengal is also changing very fast. If you look at this map of the Barin tract, you will find that these western rivers are lying west of the like Korotua, Atri, Punorbhava. They have decayed and Tista has formed a new channel. And if you look at the Ganga, Ganga has laterally oscillated within its meander belt. That I will also. And the point of connection between Bhagirathi and the Ganga has migrated about 120 kilometers from Rajmahal Downs to presently near Jongipur. That I will also explain. If you look at this map, this is the Ganga between Rajmahal Hills and the Bangladesh border, Indo-Bangladesh border. You will find the Ganga has formed a mighty bend in Malda district here. And if you can also look, this is the Gaur medieval capital town of Bengal. And if you read the Reynolds literature, Reynolds said that Ganga once flowed along the bank of along the side of the Gaur, and it shifted westward. And now the ruins of the Gaur remains about 4.5 kilometers east of the Ganga. We have about 1, 2, 3, 4 capital towns along this stretch. First one was the Rajmahal Hills somewhere near here. Subsequently, the capital town migrated to Gaur. And then, considering the recurrent flood problem, the capital town of Bengal was migrated to somewhere near a place here along the bank of the what is called Pandua. Again, they shifted somewhere near a place called Tanda. And at that point of time, Ganga had been flowing through a different course, one through place called Kalindri. This Moriband channel, it still exists. Other is Choto Bhagirathi. Third one is Pagla. If you read the history of Bengal by Jadunath Sarkar, he said Ganga flowed along a different course through Kalindri till 13th century, and it gave an unique opportunity of navigation to approach the goal through a different route. But since the Ganga migrated southwestward, everything has changed. And one interesting issue is that since the construction of the Farakka barrage, the Ganga has also changed its course remarkably. It has migrated eastward and formed a mighty bend. And right at this moment, the area upstream of the Farakka barrage, a place called Birnagar, is alarmingly experiencing erosion. And we are afraid that Ganga may avulse outflanking the Farakka barrage during a devastating flood. What I did, I overlaid some of the maps and historical maps, multi-temporal dated maps, and I find Ganga has a meander belt having a width of about 10 to 15 kilometers, where it laterally oscillates. We will have to understand these dynamics of nature. And while planning any land use plan, we need to avoid this meander belt of the river because this is the space where river oscillate like pendulum of a clock. It is a lateral oscillation system. We will have to understand this mighty river has a meander belt. So we will understand that. We need to understand that we will have to plan our river system accordingly. We will have to plan our land use plan accordingly. And again, how the optic point of Bhagirathi has changed from Taj Mahal down to, it has shifted, and it has also laterally oscillated. So because of the disconnection of the Bhagirathi from Padma, because of the neotectonic reasons, we constructed the Farakka barrage, tried to infuse the water into it. And the result is something else. And we know that these are the distributary channels which have decayed. They're like Bhairav, Jalongi, Mathabanga, because the Padma has incised its valley so deeply so that it is disconnected from the prayer. And if you look at the lower Damodar has alarmingly changed its course. It has many distributaries like Gangur, Behula, Kunti, Ghia, Kana, and many other channels. The flood of the Damodar used to flow into this area. Now, but since the British constructed a very strong embankment along the left bank to protect the railway line, the Panagarh army base, and the settlement thereon, these channels were totally beheaded. And this area, if you read Hamilton, a famous historian, he said Bardhaman is so ecologically productive, so agriculturally productive, it can feed entire Bengal. But since this construction was made and these channels were beheaded, the flood shifted to western bank, and we experienced famine in Bengal, famine in 1863. Moreover, when we constructed the railway line and highway with inadequate culvert below it, we find that the flood intensity increased, flood duration increased. I had talked about the lower Bhagirathi distributaries. I believe I must be very quick because I have I believe about 10 minutes or so.
Yes, 10 minutes, yes.
Yes. I never encroach upon others' time. I promise I will finish within 10 minutes or so. So if you look at the lower Bhagirathi distributary, Saraswati was an active channel when Portuguese came to Bengal. And we had Sandgao, a famous port town. Subsequently, it decayed and we shifted our port to Hooghly, then to Kolkata, then to Haldia, and then we are planning for a deep sea port. And other important change, this is the second part of my talk, the sea is encroaching continuously. If you look at the entire delta from India to Bangladesh, we will find a different scenario there. I will just take this is the map of the Bengal delta. If you see, the Sundarban was extended even up near the Kolkata. And it was about more than 20,000 square kilometer covering both the Bengal. Now it has been reduced to about 10,000 square kilometer. And what happened there? It is an area which has a mean height only 2 to 4 meters above mean sea level. The British engineers reclaimed this area in the western part of the Sundarban, and 54 islands were cleared, and resulting that the cyclones could approach the coast directly, and the creeks were embanked, resulting the floodplain or intertidal spaces were disconnected from the river, and all rivers gradually decayed. And what happened there? All rivers started to decay, and if you look at that map, how the coastal forest tract was reduced gradually. And now we compare the two maps. One is how Sagar Island, when Reynolds surveyed the Bengal, it was a cluster of 7 islands. When we deforested, reclaimed the part, the sea gradually invaded, continuously attacked the coast, and coastal erosion was alarming, resulting that, look at my arrow, the sea has encroached more than 7 kilometers during last 300 years or so. And the present Kopil Muni ashram has shifted more than 4 times. And it is threatened now, it will in future continuously, it is encroaching Bengal. So it is a retrograding coast. And if you look at some other entire coastal tract of Bengal, you will find all the channels, all the islands are being reduced in size because of the invading sea and the climate change impact. But in case of East Bengal, that this is the Meghna estuary, it is growing in spite of the impact of the climate change and sea level rise, because it receives the entire sediment load of the Ganga Brahmaputra's Meghna system. And I have measured that while Bengal part has lost up more than 250 square kilometer land since 1970, this part has gained 510 square kilometer land. Look at the location of Noakhali. Noakhali is somewhere, is famous where Mahatma Gandhi had been there. Here is the Noakhali, and the sea has retreated by about 35 kilometers along this stretch because of the huge sediment load. So it is a growing delta, progressing delta. But in Bengal, western part of the Bengal, West Bengal, it is a retrograding delta, coast. I will briefly explain this. One is sea surface temperature has increased more than 1 degree centigrade since 1950. The sea surface temperature, average rise of the Bay of Bengal is 0.5 degrees centigrade per decade compared to 0.06 degrees centigrade globally. The sea level at Sundarban is rising at the rate of about 4 millimeters. And while land is also subsiding at the rate of 2.9 millimeters. So combining the land subsidence and sea level rise, at Bay of Bengal, sea level is rising at the rate of about 6.9 millimeters per year. This means it is continuously encroaching the inland. Cyclonic formation is ever increasing. We recently experienced 4 cyclones: Ayla 2009, Bulbul 2019, Amphan 2020, and Yas 221. And it is informed by the IMD, another cyclone has formed which is likely to strike the coastal tract by next Sunday or day after tomorrow. So we are living dangerously. My concluding remark is that coastline is, in absence of any forest cover, it is severely eroding. See, and while even there are forest cover, it is eroding, but not at a faster rate. We have embanked our river system, and the sediment dispersal mechanism was interrupted. So all rivers are sediment load, or Sundarban and even Bengal are decaying very faster rate. We had many archaeological ruins in Sundarban. It indicates that it is a subsiding tract, and the increasing intensity of the cyclonic storm surge has put the entire coastal Bengal in peril. So we are losing the land while the eastern Brahmaputra, Meghna estuary is gaining land. So all together, the Bengal western part of the delta is really threatened, and climate change obviously is one major reason affecting but human intervention is also playing an important part in this changing ecological system of the Bengal Delta. I believe I have completed my time. I stop here. Thank you all for your patient hearing and giving me this chance to interact with you. Thank you all. Thank
you, Dr. Rudra sir, and thank you for focusing on the trijunction of the history of the rivers, how river is an oscillating entity, what river does to the coastline of Bengal, and finally, what is the impact of climate change on the Bengal Delta over a huge chronological period of 1780 to 2020. It is absolutely a very nice presentation visually and also to hear, and has already enriched the knowledge and the concept of this webinar. To all the scholars and all the speakers, everybody has enjoyed, I'm sure about that. Thank you, sir, once again. Now, and thank you for completing it in time.
Shatarupa, my last sentence is that I personally don't enjoy this kind of webinar. I prefer to teach in the classroom. Maybe one day I may get an opportunity to interact with you directly, and that
day I have interacted. Sir, you have come to our college, Sarojini Naidu College. You forgot. You came in 2017.
Yes.
So, so I have heard you.
Yes. So. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, sir. You please stay safe, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay. Now moving forward, I would like to welcome Professor Shonod Kumar Guchai. Sir is professor in Department of Geography, University of Bardwan. Sir is the senior teacher in the department. He has huge number of publications. His academic contribution is profound and extensive. Sir has mentored a large number of research scholars and has a great contribution in the field of geography from University of Bardwan. And also he is an eminent member of the Foundation of Practicing Geographers. I would like to welcome sir and request him to deliver the keynote address.
Hello, am I audible properly? Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Oh, I have to increase the volume.
Yes, sir, a little bit.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. Good morning to all present here. At first, I extend my sincere gratitude to the organizers to invite me in this international webinar, and especially Arun Singh sir. Though actually I am very much attached with this organization from the very beginning. So it's my proud privilege to speak in this webinar, where the title seems to be the river and the changing riverine ecosystem. I'm really amazed with the introductory speech of Dr. Kollan Rudra, the eminent potamologist of India. And really, I have gone through the rivers of Bengal and rivers of Bengal's the publications, but what he actually explained within the short period of time, it has become more clear, and really said that if 1 or 2 hours is given, then it would be better for us, and that can be another academic session, and I am aspiring for that lecture also. Okay. So being that means my research area, that means the expertise is basically in social and environmental geography. And so I can't avoid the social and the environmental perspective of the rivers or the riverine ecology. But at the same time, a social geographer can't actually explain any social connotation without a physical background. So while I was actually studying environmental issues and reading out the books, especially the human impact on environment and good, and subsequently thereafter other books, then I actually learned something about that is the physical perspective of the river. And so the point is that I can't actually develop the social perspective and the environmental perspective without the connotation and the denotation of the physical perspective of the river. Maybe it is true that the rainfall seems to be over the terrestrial surface seems to be the most vital element for the nourishment of this civilization. We are thinking about the blue revolution. That means using as much amount of water from the oceanic surfaces, and the rainfall we get the basic source seems to be the river basin. But the point is that we can't actually avoid the importance of river, especially in the context of human civilization, because the distribution of the water and its associated complex of land, soil, and biota, it is most specifically done by the rivers and the river basins. So in that particular context, the importance of river and the river basin in an integrated complex that is known as the riverine ecology cannot well be explained without the perspective of the channel dynamics of the river and the integrated complex of the riverine ecology. So to unfold this actually dynamics, I would like to start from the physical backdrop of the river and the riverine ecology from the perspective of dimensions. That means the dimensions of the spatial surface, geometry, morphometry, basin analysis, and the system analysis of the river basin, first of all, and thereafter the integrated river basin management, riverine hazards, riverine ecology, and the social perspective of the river. So keeping aside the classical consideration of that means the geomorphology by Lee, Gilbert, or the Rankin, like others, I will rather want to start with basically from the Hortonian that is the school, and thereafter the development of this outlook of that means the study of the rivers and the river basin in that perspective. So if we consider the Hortonian perspective of river from the 1920s to that of the 1940s, initially it was the channel geometry or like this, and later on the Horton, Izard, Izard or the Taylor concentrated on basically the hydrodynamics. And later on, Scoom, Miller, etc. in the 1950s, they intensified the basin dynamics, and the 60s is related to that of the morphology of the river basins by the Stroller, with that of the, who is one of the proponent of the quantitative evolution, and the system analysis of the drainage basin by Chorley and others. And from the late 1970s or 80s, we entered into the drainage basin management. And from the 2000s or late 1990s, we entered into the, that means the river hazards or the riverine hazards. So in the first backdrop, I will try to step my deliberation in that perspective, the Hortonian school system analysis of the drainage basin and that of the integrated river basin management and the riverine hazard. Here I first of all would like to address that means the dimension. In the spatial perspective, we normally consider it in 4 types of dimension. Dimension 0, that is the point dimension. Dimension 1, that is the linear dimension. Dimension double dimension, that is the aerial dimension. And the triple dimension, that is the volumetric dimension, which is very much important in understanding the river and the river basin in understanding the dynamics of the river and the river. In the context of that means the point dimension, normally I ask to my students first in some that means question that whether neck point is a point or a line. They actually confuse somebody says it is a point, somebody says it is line. So it's the nature of interpretation. That is, if you consider the surface feature of neck point, it is obviously a line where we can observe the waterfall. But if you consider that is the deflection of that is the force of water or the deflection of hydrological force, it actually the neck point is a point. So it is the interpretation on which you are actually looking for. And in the context of that means the point dimension, we normally consider in the river analysis that river is not simply that means the channelized flow of the natural waters. It also considers the linear, not only the linear dimension, the point dimension in terms of that means the bifurcation ratio. That means how far the lower order stream at a particular point actually indulging more and more discharge and the load into the higher order stream. And similarly, actually Horton actually developed all those that means the classical ideas in terms of the point dimension, in terms of the linear dimension, in terms of the that means the aerial dimension of the drainage basin of the different orders, and also in terms of that means the volumetric dimension. So we can't actually avoid all those things. And a river, through its dynamic process and the structure process interrelationship. If we look at this journey from the 1920s to that of the 1960s or the 70s, this geometry and the process are actually interlinked, whether it is the river as a system or the river basin as a system or the river as a process, or it may be the forms. It is the processes and the structure process relationship, interrelationship. And in that context, that though the structuralism was actually put forward in the social science, basically from the 1950s, though Ferdinand de Saussure initiated the linguistic structuralism in 1944, and it was once again explained by his students in 1949. But in physical sciences, normally this structuralism was the main arm to study the process. But the time consideration is not an important, rather than the geometry and the energy dynamics seems to be the more important in understanding the riverine dynamics or the basin dynamics. Now coming into that means the river basin, I would say in a different context that is known as the entropy model. And this entropy model is not the thermodynamic entropy, rather than it is the statistical entropy developed by the Boltzmann. In this statistical entropy, if we consider simply, if we want to intensify the what is statistic, it has some difficult connotation, but simply what I want to say, that if you take a larger rock body and make it its larger fragments, so the number of fragments will be lower. That means the number of fragments will be few. But if you, for a larger rock body, if you split it into a smaller rock fragments, then the number of fragments will be huge. And this is the basics of the statistical entropy. And if we look at the river basin, any river basin, that means a major or the small size, some medium sized river basin or the larger river basin. Here, this entropy concept, statistical entropy concept is orderly arranged. There are more number of first order stream, relatively less number of second order stream, relatively less number of third order stream in that sequential order. And in the basin area also, there are more number of the first order basins, lesser number of the second order basins, and lesser number of the higher order basins. So this statistical entropy is actually found in the eco-pyramid also. That means that if you look at the producers to that of the consumers, the same thing is there. The number of that means at the lower level of that means the first entropy, first trophic level, the number is used, and while going towards the upward, that means the trophic level, the number seems to be small. And so, if we consider the drainage basin in terms of a particular order and the particular arrangement and their interrelation, interdependence, and the interconnections, and the integrations, and ultimately the unity. And this is known not only the drainage basin as a terrestrial unit, it is some sort of ecological unit also. And that is the perspective of Riverine physical ecology, if not the social ecology. Here, the nature has created this order with an interlinking, interdependence, and integration. And with that integration, the river flow actually occurs. The basin arrangement actually distributes its that means the flow or share its that means the share the rainfalls, and ultimately from the first order stream to the higher order stream, and from the first order basin to that of the higher order basin. It is such interdependence, interrelation, and integrity. It is transformed into the flow accumulation and the discharge accumulation. The flow accumulation and the discharge accumulation. If it is optimum, then we are not facing the hazards. If it is higher than the optimum, than the carrying capacity of the environment, then it leads to flood. And if it is below the optimum level, then it leads to some sort of water scarcity. So, any sort of drainage basin, what is known as the flood or the scarcity, water scarcity in the upper basin area, first order basin area, those are naturally created, and it is the interrelations and the integrations. We can't actually avoid it. And by that way, the floods are actually normal. We have to accept the riverine flood because of this interdependence, interrelation, integration, and this flow accumulation. If it's actually crossed the carrying capacity of the river, it leads to flood. And that flood and flood waters has actually created some integrated aspect of land, water, soil, and biota, which is the essence of the riverine ecology. We can't actually ignore this riverine ecological unit by the river administration. We can't actually ignore this. And by the river administration, actually, we have ignored this integrity and the unity of the riverine ecology or the river basin as an integrated unit, not only the physical unit, not only the hydrological unit, it is also some ecosystem unit. It has its own personality with the interdependence of the interrelation and ultimately integration and the unity. So while Roosevelt actually in an inaugural ceremony of the Hoover Dam in 1935, what he said? He said, I am reading out here, I came, I saw, and I was conquered. And that is the first major breakthrough in administrating the river by the dams. The dam buildings of the modern times has been initiated, a major breakthrough from the initiation of the Hoover Dam. And from the 1980s, China has proposed 20,000 dams, and of which they have already achieved 12 to 14,000 dams. They have already actually constructed. Those dams are the demos. The chief architect, one of the chief architect of the Hoover Dam actually organized the protest against the dam later on in the 1970s. So in that way, actually, this human intervention, either constructing dam or abducting water or creating the barrages or creating that means a rail line.
Sorry, sir. I would like just to 1 minute. Sir, could you please sit back from your screen for a few centimeter, or so that we can visualize you properly. because your face is not properly visible. Sir, আরেকটু পিছনে কি বসা যাবে একটু দেখা যাচ্ছে না এখনো পুরোটা।
Okay. So in that way, actually, we have to perceive it. And here the context that I want to add here, that is the land ethics of Aldo Leopold. While there was Chinese Revolution in 1949 to initiate the communist society in China, at that particular time, Aldo Leopold, a monumental book was published, that is the San Country Almanac, where the most important chapter seems to be the land. Here, that means the land is not the land, it is the earth system, where the land, water, soil, biota are an integrated aspect, and that has an ethics. And with a human being, we are actually violating that ethics. And that is the problem of our society. And now I am converting in sine qua non to that of the land ethics of the Aldo Leopold. I would add here a new term, that is the watershed ethics in the context of riverine ecology. We are actually violating the watershed ethics. Water, in a particular watershed, there is some distribution, flow, and arrangement of waters through the different orders of streams and the river basins with an integration, interrelations, and unity. And that is being lost. So far, I have discussed in terms of basically the structural outlook of the river basins of the river. Now come where actually the time is ignored. But today, if we consider, that means that not only this structuralist perspective of the process response system, it's not only the intriguing areas of that means the river geomorphology or the riverine ecology. Now the archaeologists, the GIS experts are actually coming together, where actually they are working to study the history. It is true that with a human being, we basically live for the present. We do not look for the future, or we do not look for the past so much. Michel Foucault actually initiated that dialogue, the genealogy. That means we are not in a position only to know the history. We have to integrate the history. And that has been started now, that we have to study the archaeology of the rivers. We have to study the archaeological profile of the rivers through the remote sensing gas. And now I shall initiate here in the context of the lost river Saraswati. It was basically the Ghaggar-Harka river valley system, which was alive, too much alive 5,000 years ago. And it was almost parallel to that of the Indus River Valley system, flowing through basically the part of the Rajasthan and some portions of the eastern part of the present Pakistan, and ultimately to the Rann of Kutch. It has been discovered. And by the Lal actually consider that, if we consider already Dr. Rudra has mentioned that we experience a climate change around 12,000 years to 15,000 years ago. And after the melting of the glaciers from that glacial phase, around 9,000 to 8,000 years ago, actually the rivers like the Saraswati, the Jamuna, or the Indus, or the Satluj, those would carry huge amount of water. But what Lal has said, around 2,700 BC, that means around 4,700 years ago, there was a tectonic movement by which actually this Indian peninsular shield actually shifted towards tilted towards the east. And with that east, that was basically responsible for the drying of the Ghaggar and Harka valley system. At that time, not only the Indus Valley was only the civilization, the Punjab, Haryana, and the Rajasthan, almost there were small other urban centers. But due to this tectonic shift, actually the tectonic movement, which actually occurred during the 4,700 years ago, the Tong River, which is known as that means the tributary of the Jamuna, it was not the tributary of the Jamuna, it was initially the tributary of the that means the Saraswati, and it was connected with the glacier, and it would collect so much of the melted water which would flow through that of the Saraswati and Ghagara the Harda system. And in Jaisalmer, the excavation has been put by Rao and et al. That in those areas, the paleo channels and their aquifer recharge dates back to that of the 5,000 years ago. And even with that tectonic movement, some other types of tributaries of Saraswati, they actually joined with the Satluj. Satluj in that means the Indic language, it is known as the Shatadru. That means the sum of more than hundreds of channels, and the sum of the channels actually joined with the Shatadru, leaving the Saraswati, and by that way, actually Saraswati has become dried up. So we should not only be interested in it to discuss the river only in terms of that means the channel dynamics or the basin morphometry. We have to look at the genealogy of the river systems through which we have to think about. And here I will unfold that means the metaphor of the Kal and the Mohakal in our Indian mythology. That means the goddesses Kali actually exposed their tongue, putting the foot on the Mohakal, because you are actually ignoring the eternity and you are actually living for the moment or the time, which is not a clear understanding of the greater truth. And so the Kali exposes her tongue while putting the feet on the Shiva or the Mohakal. And so while we are discussing these rivers and the river system only for the present, it is not a wiser thing. We have to look into the past and we have to dig out the genealogy of the rivers and the river systems of the river ecology and how we have actually degraded. If nature is responsible for degradation, we have no other way. Now coming into that means the social perspective, the time is very short and I will wind up within 5 or 7 minutes. That means the social perspective of the river. While I am actually delivering this lecture or that means the keynote address, my parents, my relatives are actually affected by flood, and they have been. My parents are living in my room in the second floor, while my relatives have been relocated in the contact because it is flood affected by the Kelegai rivers, the embankment failure, and the 5 blocks are highly flood affected. They are not getting in the drinking water. That means from the tube well or like this. And the same thing I have observed for the Sundarban, what kind of Riverine hazards are there. Riverine hazards are there. Dr. Rudra has unfolded that means these hazards. And I have experienced that means the society of Sundarban. From my very childhood, as it is my second home, or emotionally it is my first home, nearby the Goshaba Vashanti area. And even that means when I was 17 years old, we would communicate through Vashanti by launch, that means the steamer service. That means only 40 years ago, only 40 or 35, 30 to 35 years ago. And now it is no more navigable around the Canning River. And the whole Sundarban area, if you look at that, people are living at the bank sides of the river and they are facing the hazards. And at the same time, for the Sundarban, not only the embankments, the road have been constructed at the middle of the interflow, Vidyadhari, Matla, Kalindi, Piali, and so on, so on. And by that way, the riverine connections of the mainstream society has been lost. Earlier, the people
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Maybe technical glitches from Sir's side, maybe.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, we will wait for some time. I
Yeah,
think he will
sometime.
resume. Yeah, he is
Yes,
Okay.
he can
I,
audible now. He can
Yes,
audible
sir,
now.
please continue.
Yes. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
yes, sir. Yes,
Yes, sir.
please,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Continue.
Please continue, sir.
The saline environment, they have actually adapted with their own, that means the livelihood. But this construction in the construction of the actually have degraded the Sundarban. And in the Bengal perspective, the tribal actually considers the river as their daughter. And in Indian perspective, the common people consider the river as the mother. And if you ask to any people in Bengal, especially in Sundarban, what I have observed, that where are you going? I am going to the riverside. The riverside seems to be not only their functional relation, that is their psychological attachment to that of the river. They call it Gangdhare Jachi. So every river in Indian context is as if it is connoted with that of the river Ganges. And if you look at the another, that means publication Gangchi, communicating this perspective of that means the journal, that means the how the nature and the river and the birds are eloquated in that of the literary studies, like the publication of the Gangchi. Not entirely it is like this, but it is like so. This perspective of the river, that means the man-river interface of the common people, it was some sort of holy perspective. But we have degraded with the indiscriminate agricultural practices, with that are the indiscriminate industrial practices, and by that way, the sewage system. Some of the rivers have transformed into sewage system, for which actually Raj Kapoor built up his, that means the film Ram Teri Gangamai. The rivers are dying. Rivers are dying. What was actually put by Dr. Rudra. Now coming, if I do not actually unfold, mention here the Roosevelt comments, that although Leopold and so many others, but if I do not unfold the essence of the man-river interaction, highlighted by Dr. Kuntala Lahiri and the associate authors institute of Gopal Samantu, the dancing with the river. So how the people, the river and the society is interlinked. Not only it is associated, inscripted in the Podda Nodi Maji, that means the river is the life. And it is the main way of life to the both men. It is also found in the chores of the Damodars. The people, the environmental refugee and the political refugee, throughout the chores of Ganges and the Damodar, they have occupied those chores. They have no other way to go out. They have occupied those chores. They are considered as the environmental refugee or the political refugee. Political refugee from the East Pakistan and from the Bihar and so on. So if you go through the chores of the Damodars, either they have come from Bihar, or in the chores of the Bhagirathi, either they have come from Bihar or they have come from the Bangladesh. They are living there, but their life is like the ebb and flow of the river system. If it is the high peak discharge, those people normally sit their shelter on the bank of the Damodar. But the people outside the bank of the Damodar, they actually claim that inferior people, the chore people. Lahiri has illustrated with a fantastic ideology. We and they, we are superior. The people who are living beyond the man, we are superior. We are not liable to shift our residence during the peak period or the off-peak period. But the people in the shoreline areas, they are actually likely to shift their residence in that way. And in that way, the core periphery of the relationship has been expressed in terms of the dancing with the rivers. This river dancing means the peak flow and the off-peak flow, and by that way, how the people are actually adjusting with the river system. And this kind of perception, that means we and they, I have found it in the Chitmahal area. While studying there, that means so many people have come to Chitmahal areas from that of the southern portion of the Bangladesh as it was stormy. So while asking them that who are those people, then the mainland people who are the original residents of the Chitmahal, they consider that, oh, those are the Bhatia Muslims or the Bhatiyas. That means those are the environmental refugees. So in that way, the riverine hazards have created some sort of environmental refugee who are not actually welcome into the mainstream society even till now at the 21st century. We divide it like the river, that we and they. So by that way, I would like to conclude, I would not want to extend anymore, that the river or the riverine ecology, if the physical ecology and the social ecology is integrated into one flux, that is known as the riverine space. And in that space, by the administration of the river, we have degraded the river. Ganga has really become a dirty river now. Not only the Ganga here resembles to all other rivers in the industrial areas of the world. And it is a time I am not always, that means the pessimistic or the optimistic, rather than in between. So what I think that we have to think in another way. By this, what actually explained by Kollan Rudra, not only this archaeology, tectonicity, or the channel morphology, hydrology, and the processes. At the same time, the global warming has initiated some sort of threat. And the threat is like that flood in the rivers, in the higher order rivers, while the drought in the lower order rivers. Because away from 125 kilometers or 200 kilometers from the coastal line, the global warming has created some sort of aridity. And that has been expressed in the Bengali literature by Jasimuddin for the coastal areas of the rivers. Amai Dubai lire, amai Bhasai lire, akul doriya more cool nai. So this is the reality of that means the global warming and related flood hazards phenomena. And not only it is that means the administration of the river. River administration is likely to initiate that kind of fact. And on the other hand, if we consider the interior of the drainage basin, it has created another, that means the drought prone, and the people of the Maharashtra and the Pune, they are shouting like this. Can you lend me a piece of cloud from the Cherrapunji to that of the Sahara? If not Sahara for Indian context, it is the Thor, or in the semi-desert areas of the Telangana. Cherrapunji theke ek phali megh ene dite paro Gobi Sahara. So all those things were there, but it has been intensified. So what we have to do, I would like to say, apart from this watershed ethics, what I would like to say, two types of plannings. The immediate concern is the adjustment with that of the with this situation. That means to live with flood or to live with drought. That is the immediate. That means the adjustment. We have no other way to live with flood and to live with the drought. But in the long-term adjustment, if you want to consider, we have to anyhow manage the riverine ecosystem, conservation of the riverine ecology. So the conservation of riverine ecology will be our long-term planning, and the immediate adjustments will be our short-term planning, by which we will be look into the rivers and the riverine ecology. It's a hydrological process, its channel form, its channel development, its basin ecology, its man-river interaction will come to a peaceful solution. And I think within these 2 days, the different dignitaries will unfold all those things through their learned visions, through their rigorous research. And it should not be confined within the academic complex. This is my realization. We are actually talking so much within the academic environment or the arena, but that is not going back to that of the society. And here I think being is becoming, the action research should be started here. Being is becoming not only the seminar talks, not only the research, but it should be the action research, by which in the long term, we will be able to revive the ecology of the river basins. That is the utmost necessity, because most of the people of the world actually apart from the coastal areas or the extreme resident areas live in the riverine ecology. With those words, I once again extend my sincere thanks to the organizers, and I wish a success of this seminar. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Buchheit sir, for such an extensive, elaborate and enriching lecture, and highlighting that just limiting the riverine ecosystem to the present study would not be enough, and a vivid understanding of the physical and social backdrop is also very important in the riverine ecosystem research, and research should be beyond academics and it should be action research. Thank you, sir, once again. Now I would request Srimati Prakriti Dash, Assistant Professor, Victorian Institution College, Kolkata, to extend her vote of thanks.
Thank you, Shatarupa. Good morning, everybody. I consider myself privileged to be present here and to offer a vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank Foundation of Practicing Geographers, Kolkata, for organizing this webinar on river and changing riverine ecosystem in general, and all the members of the managing committee. I am also thankful to the organizing committee for their hard work they have put in organizing this 2-day international webinar. On behalf of the organizing committee, I must put on record my sincere thanks to Dr. Aznarul Islam, Assistant Professor and HOD Acting, who worked very hard to make this webinar a success. On behalf of every LIFE member, managing committee members, members of webinar organizing committee, I extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Kollan Rudro, Chairperson Pollution Control Board, Government of West Bengal, for kindly agreeing to deliver his inaugural address. Dr. Rudro, as we all know, an internationally acclaimed river expert, has managed to give his valuable time and has shared his thoughts on river ecosystem. My sincere thanks to Professor Sanat Kumar Buchheit, Department of Geography, Bardhaman University, for agreeing to deliver his keynote address. Professor Buchheit has always been very kind to Foundation of Practicing Geographers, and whenever Foundation has requested him to give a talk, he has readily agreed to it. My heartfelt thanks to Dr. Aborna Mukhopadhyay for introducing today's webinar, and Dr. Ayan Dasgupta for throwing essential light on the focal theme of today's webinar. I extend my gratitude to all the distinguished guest speakers, distinguished lead speakers, and delegate speakers, honorable chairpersons, and session coordinators, and speakers of valedictory session who have come forward to enrich us by participating in this international webinar. Lastly, thanks to Dr. Uttiyo Chattopadhyay for his inaugural song, and to Sri Debobroto Mondol for providing the necessary web assistance. Last but not the least, I extend my good wishes to all the students, research scholars, teachers, and other participants who have registered themselves to participate in this webinar. And I hope that they get some thought-provoking ideas from this 2-day international webinar on river and changing riverine ecosystem. So all of you, please do enjoy this webinar, and thank you to all of you. Thank you. Shatarupa?
Yeah. Okay, with this, we come to the end of our introductory session. Next, from 11:37, we will be having one technical session, which will be a parallel session. One will be the first parallel session of guest speakers, and the second parallel session will be of the lead speakers. The chairperson of technical session 1, first parallel session, will be Professor Vishwambar Prasad Sathi, Mizoram University, India. And the session coordinator will be Dr. Sumit Mukherjee, of Retired Research Associate of Anthropological Survey of India, Kolkata. And in the